I suppose that the first question we might ask is why the issue of confidence in the justice system is important. We do know that during the past 2 decades, a significant body of literature has emerged within many Western nation states focused on the problem of confidence in the justice system, and more specifically on confidence in the courts, the police, the prison system, and the workings of parole. Here in British Columbia in 2007, the provincial government developed an ambitious justice system agenda, setting out performance targets for public confidence in the justice system, a more effective criminal justice system, and more effective civil and family justice systems within the province. Now, why is this important? A good answer should emerge from looking carefully at the best available data regarding confidence in the justice system. When Canadians were asked in 2003, do you have a great deal of confidence or quite a lot of confidence in the justice system, only 57% responded positively, in contrast to 34% who have, quote, not very much confidence, unquote, or no confidence at all in the justice system. In contrast, a much higher percentage of Canadians responded positively to an identical question about our healthcare and education systems. When asked about confidence in our federal parliament, however, only 43% responded positively and 45% responded negatively. Confidence in the welfare system fared even more poorly, with only 41% expressing confidence. When the terrain shifts to private institutions, the results are similarly divergent. Canada's banks enjoy the confidence of 68% of the public, but confidence in Canada's corporations is limited to 46% of Canadians, with 43% expressing not very much confidence or no confidence at all. Now, what significance should we attach to these findings within these different realms? First, we might suggest that the relatively low levels of confidence in our federal parliament reflect a lack of confidence in our political process. On the other hand, these figures may merely reflect the divisiveness that is an inherent part of any democratic political process. When only 43% of Canadians indicate confidence in the federal parliament, those in opposition may be relaying their feelings about the government of the day, and not about the parliamentary system more generally. Put differently, the results may not suggest that Canadians reject our system of government as much as they suggest a more specific dissatisfaction with those who have been elected. Similarly, a greater confidence in banks than in other corporations reflects the relatively benign face of the highly regulated banking sector, a mechanism for the creation of financial stability, in contrast to the arguably more mercenary and self-interested private companies. Now, the contrast within the public realm among the justice, health, and education sectors are more telling. When one goes to a public school, to a university, or to a physician, one is seeking certain kinds of assistance in a non-adversarial context, improvements to understanding, training that will enable meaningful employment, or a diagnosis that will promote healing and/or better health. In contrast, contact with the justice system implies conflict, regardless of whether one is involved as a litigant or an observer. There is a winner and a loser in adversarial transactions of justice, a conviction or an acquittal, a finding of liability or accident, a sentence of probation or imprisonment. Given this backdrop, it would be very surprising if there was as much confidence in the justice system as there is in systems of public health or public education. Additionally, those who actually experience negative outcomes, potentially half or more of all litigants, are not likely to feel positively about the justice system or to express confidence in it. Now, the finding that I've just noted is also played out in other jurisdictions, the differences between the health and education systems and the justice system. In the United States, the United Kingdom, and European jurisdictions, citizens express more confidence in the medical and public educational institutions than they do in the criminal justice system, or the justice system more generally. Now, Canada fares very well when compared to the United States and finishes 6th in a list of 15 European countries with respect to confidence in the justice system. The list is topped by Denmark, where 79% of citizens express a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in the justice system, and trailed by Spain and Italy, where only 32% of citizens express similar levels of confidence. Quite dramatic differences. In the United States, however, the results are even more dismal. Confidence in the justice system is expressed by only 29% of respondents. It's worth adding that confidence in most public and private institutions in the United States is considerably lower than in other Western nation states. There is less confidence in the banking sector, in the medical system, and public schooling. Now, before discussing the issue of what's driving these international differences in confidence, I think it's worth noting that confidence within the system itself varies significantly as one goes from police to the courts and on to the prison and parole systems. Polls undertaken in Canada by Angus Reid in the late 1990s and by Ipsos Reid in 2002 indicated that more than 80% of those surveyed are very or somewhat confident of local police and the RCMP, while only 60% expressed similar views of the courts, 50% of the prison system, and 25 to 35% of both parole and youth justice systems. So there's considerably more confidence expressed in the actions of the Supreme Court of Canada. Almost 70% say they have a lot of confidence or some confidence in the Supreme Court, in contrast to the 60% expressing confidence in the provincial courts. We might ask ourselves if it has something to do with access. Of course, Canadians have direct access to the decisions of the Supreme Court of Canada in a way that they simply do not have access to decisions of the provincial court or the superior courts. Now, these findings are mirrored in surveys undertaken within other jurisdictions beyond Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, New Zealand. Police tend to enjoy more public confidence than courts, the prison system, and the parole system. I should add that these views have not changed dramatically in Canada during the past 20 years. The most detailed and recent assessment of Canadians' confidence in the justice system can be found in the General Social Survey of 2004. The General Social Survey of Canadians has been undertaken at 5-year intervals from 1988 onwards, and our most recent data demonstrate that there have been no statistically significant changes during that time in relation to the percentage of Canadians who believe that police, the courts, the prison system, and the parole system are, quote, doing a good job. So what predicts confidence in the justice system? What are the variables of relevance? I want to start here by saying something about the media portrayals of crime and the role that they play in affecting confidence in the justice system. The media cover the most unusual and horrific of crimes, the disgusting details of sadistic serial rapist and killer Paul Bernardo, front page news for months across the country, and more recently, for example, the crimes of Willie Pickton. The most typical homicide in the city of Vancouver. One man stabs another to death in a downtown rooming house when both are very drunk. Receives very little coverage, column inch or two perhaps. Similarly, coverage of rates of crime, and for example, the utility and productivity of a criminal justice system response to the public health problems of illicit drug use and abuse, these receive scant attention, at least in contrast to police pronouncements regarding the latest seizure of illicit drugs, or various horrific tales of the conduct of violent drug traffickers. Lost in the coverage of extreme circumstances and extreme individuals are basic questions about the logic of criminalization of various kinds of crimes, and as important, the more typical and mundane portraits of those who commit criminal offenses. Here in British Columbia, the morning television news is little more than a compilation of crimes, fires, and accidents from the previous evening, presenting a world that seems frightening, somewhat out of control, and occasionally predatory. In contrast, the decisions of our courts, with their balancing of interest, seem in conflict, not responding seriously enough to these extremes. I want to add that current federal legislation, a series of crime bills focused on, for example, mandatory minimums for drug offenders, removal of the so-called faint hope clause, and reduction of the use of conditional sentences, among other things, serve to exploit this combination of fear and ignorance. What remains unclear is whether the architects of the legislation, the Harper conservatives, actually believe in the utility and the logic of their proposed changes, or simply see a strategy that can flip the switch, that can mobilize public opinion in their favor. So what are the characteristics of those who believe in such strategies? The National Justice Survey of 2007 was an attempt to understand more fully the issue of public confidence. A telephone survey of 4,500 Canadians took place in February and March of 2007 and obtained results regarding the extent of confidence that are not dramatically different from the findings of the General Social Survey that I mentioned above. The novel contribution was to point to the variables that predict which Canadians are more likely to have confidence in the justice system and which Canadians are least likely. The researchers found that the following characteristics are associated with perceptions of greater confidence in the criminal justice system. Those who believe in the accuracy of official parole statistics, those who view government as an important source of information about crime, those who believe in investing in crime prevention, those who believe that judges should give some credit at sentencing for pretrial custody, those who are under the age of 65, those who believe rehabilitation should be an important goal of sentencing, those who believe tougher penalties will improve confidence in the justice system, those with a university degree, those who believe that harm reduction is an appropriate response for the problem of illegal drug use and abuse, and those who perceive conditional sentences to be an appropriate response to crime. Conversely, we look at those with much less confidence in the justice system. They're more likely to believe that crime has risen in the past 5 years, to live in Western Canada, to be older than 65, to have been a witness in the criminal justice system, to believe that tougher penalties are an appropriate response to illegal drugs, and to have been a victim of crime. These findings point to education as an important means for improving confidence in the justice system. The best available data regarding crime rates suggests that rates of both property crime and violent crime fell during the period in question, and that the best source of information regarding crime is not that of television news or the opinions of friends and family. Those with less confidence in the criminal justice system were most likely to see TV news and friends and family as their most important sources of information. It follows that if Canadians seek out and rely on more accurate sources of information regarding crime, they're more likely to understand its workings more clearly and in turn to have more confidence. Dube and Roberts found, for example, that the public typically underestimates the severity of sentences imposed for criminal offences, and this mistaken perception leads them to have less confidence in the judiciary and the justice system more generally. Similar results regarding mistaken perceptions and regarding leniency and public confidence have been obtained in other jurisdictions as well, most notably the United Kingdom. So it would seem, at least intuitively, that nation states with low rates of crime, low rates of imprisonment, and an independent judiciary would promote confidence in justice. Recent work by Finnish researcher Lappi Seppälä has built upon a literature that has sought to understand why countries differ so markedly in their approaches to punishment and in the practices that they endorse. It would seem logical to conclude that nation states in which there is a greater use of imprisonment and in which crime control initiatives have been preeminent are also nation states that have had to struggle with either rising crime rates or rates of crime that have historically been rather high relative to other nation states. Now, his work suggests that rates of crime and rates of imprisonment are largely unrelated. This is looked at globally across many countries. The best available data demonstrate, for example, that while rates of crime have been falling in the United States since 1980, rates of imprisonment have accelerated dramatically. In dramatic contrast, during the same period of time, rates of crime have increased in Finland, but rates of imprisonment have declined. In Canada, rates of crime and rates of imprisonment have not diverged significantly, though rates of crime have fallen somewhat since the early to mid-1990s. As more and more nation states are added to this portrait, to this mix, the picture becomes quite clear. The crime rate, whether assessed through reported rates of crime or the more reliable survey of individual victimization by crime, is not related in any systematic way to the use of imprisonment by the given nation state. If we look at the same data through a different lens, we can see that confidence in the justice system of a nation state is not related to the extent of crime within that nation state, whether measured by crimes reported to the police or by survey responses to questions concerning individual victimization. Additionally, Lapisapala found that when he correlated trust in the legal system and trust in people in general, those countries in which citizens expressed the greatest degree of trust in others and in their justice systems also had the lowest rates of imprisonment. Not the lowest rates of crime necessarily, but the lowest rates of imprisonment. Those surveyed were asked, please tell me on a score of 0 to 10 how much you trust each of the following institutions: your country's parliament, the legal system, the police, politicians. And similarly, people were asked, do you feel most people can be trusted, can't be too careful, etc. The data revealed that the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, have the highest levels of trust in people and in public institutions, and the lowest rates of imprisonment, followed closely by Switzerland. Western European nation states occupy a middle range, and the worst performance, that is, high rates of imprisonment and little trust in people or in the legal system, is to be found in the United Kingdom and in the states of Eastern Europe. Canada would also appear to fall in this range as well, given the results of similar surveys. I might add that the data cannot begin to even accommodate the high extent of imprisonment in the United States and the correspondingly low levels of trust in people and in public institutions. Lapisapala also noted that the political systems of democratic nation states can be characterized as either consensus or majoritarian. In a consensus democracy, one's likely to find a larger number of political parties, proportional electoral systems, leaning towards broad-based coalitions or minority governments. Political decisions are undertaken in a spirit of consensus and cooperation. In contrast, majoritarian democracies are based on two powerful parties vying for power in a winner-take-all contest. The power of government and political decision-making is concentrated in the hands of the majority, sometimes a majority that, in fact, only has 30 to 40% of the popular vote. Lapisapala describes Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland as consensus democracies. Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the outlier, the United States, can be described as majoritarian democracies, nation-states in which two parties have traditionally dominated electoral politics, with the framework of winner-take-all elections. There are some potential weaknesses, of course, in this analysis. We are necessarily provided only with correlational data, and it may be that observed differences in rates of imprisonment might be due to some other factor than the consensus majoritarian character of the given nation-state. Similarly, the relationship between trust and rates of imprisonment may not indicate that high rates of imprisonment are a consequence of low levels of trust in human beings and public institutions. There may be other characteristics of these nation-states which explain the inverse relationships between democratic character and rates of imprisonment, and trust and rates of imprisonment. Now, Lapisapala uses the extremes of Finland and the United Kingdom to make the point that the United Kingdom has high levels of fear and large numbers of prisoners. In Finland, the situation is reversed. Comparing British and, as he writes, comparing British and Finnish newspapers is like comparing two different worlds. Differences may be associated with national variations in public financing and in the regulation of the media. Strong public networks assure more substantive content, more educational cultural content, higher quality, and less low-level populism. And I think if we reflect on what we see in British Columbia, in the United Kingdom, and certainly in the United States, we see lower quality, low-level populism, and very little regulation of the media to assure substantive content of an educational character. So, what about the road ahead? When one surveys Canadians or British Columbians about why there is little confidence in the justice system, many, particularly those who have little confidence, typically point the finger of blame at the various actors. Judges who are too lenient, a parole system that places the rights of the convicted criminal above the mandate of public safety, and prisons that fail to deliver on the promise of delivering any meaningful rehabilitation. The answer for those who have little confidence is to increase the range of available punishments, tie the hands of the lenient judges with mandatory minimum terms of imprisonment, tighten up parole decision-making, and hold prison wardens and their staff more accountable for the consequences of their care and the decisions that are made. The difficulty with this solution is that the best available evidence suggests that it simply won't work. The United States has very low rates of public confidence in the justice system, coexisting with globally staggering rates of imprisonment and longer sentences. The best available data, again, correlational, suggests the need for changes in our legal and political systems. Not more imprisonment, but less. A legislative system characterized by proportional representation and consensus-driven negotiations. Changes in media portrayals of law, justice, and crime. Moving away from sensationalist content and towards accurate, factual discussions about the reality of crime. These are obviously changes that require major shifts in cultural beliefs, in attitudes and practices, but I think they're the changes that are most likely to hold significant promise. Now, understandably, an agenda for improving public confidence in the justice system also has to be more focused, more inclined towards smaller steps than the possibility of a revolution in public opinion and approach. To date, a number of possibilities have been put forward, and I'll simply focus on the most productive of these: education. In 2002, Chapman et al. Surveyed a national sample of more than 1,000 adults in England to determine their knowledge of crime, sentencing, and the operation of the criminal justice system. They also asked about attitudes to current sentencing practices and about their confidence in the criminal justice system. A total of 220 of those surveyed then participated in an experiment to test the impact of providing information about the criminal justice system. 3 different formats were used for delivering the educational materials. A 24-page booklet designed to be visually attractive and easy to understand. 2 seminars featuring presentations by experts. And 3, a video presentation of one of these seminars combined with other visual material. The subjects were then surveyed again to determine whether these presentations, whether this material, had changed their levels of knowledge and their attitudes towards the criminal justice system. The second round of surveys indicated that respondents now had a greater knowledge of crime. They were less inclined to believe that rates of crime were increasing. They expressed somewhat less fear of crime, less likely to view the courts as overly lenient, and more likely to express confidence in the justice system. At the same time, however, those who had particularly entrenched views, expressed a very strong adherence to a law and order perspective, were less likely to change their viewpoints. Taken collectively, all formats produced what might be termed positive changes: greater knowledge, less fear of crime, and more confidence in the justice system. More recently, again in the United Kingdom, Singer and Cooper built on the earlier research by creating a randomly controlled trial of information regarding crime and criminal justice and its impact on public confidence. The researchers emphasized the importance of not only informing, but also persuading and reminding recipients about the operation of the criminal justice system. As with the earlier work, it was important for the authors to design a booklet that was attractive, compelling, and easy to understand. And I think to the extent that education is going to be a strategy, that has to be front and center in terms of thinking and its delivery, how you actually get it to people, has to be front and center as well. And in any event, Singer and Cooper surveyed approximately 3,000 adults in Northamptonshire, an area of the United Kingdom that has quite low levels of confidence in justice, and then randomly assigned 1,600 to one of 4 categories. Control group did not receive the booklet, received the booklet in the mail, handed the booklet in person, and handed the booklet in person with an explanation. The study indicated that provision of a booklet increased the accuracy of knowledge about the criminal justice system, particularly when the booklet was handed to the recipient with or without an explanation. More specifically, when the control group was compared with all 3 experimental groups, the researchers found about a 10% increase in confidence that the criminal justice system can, quote, bring people who commit crime to justice. Without the booklet, only about 34% of those in the area expressed confidence, but almost 45% of those in the experimental groups did so. So that research replicates and extends earlier work, pointing to the carefully constructed provision of information as a useful mechanism for boosting confidence in the criminal justice system. The challenge ahead, and I think it's a substantial one, but one worth undertaking, can this information be systematically and functionally communicated to a much greater universe of citizens? So, what can we conclude? That much of our difficulty flows from our political and economic culture and the extent to which reporting regarding crime does a disservice to the complexity and to the range of the problem, and that education does provide us with a possibility for improvements, albeit within the context of the constraints just noted. The tragedy of the present is that we have a government in Ottawa offering us a series of crime bills based on the exploitation of public fears and simultaneously based upon an almost total absence of relevant empirical data regarding crime prevention and crime reduction. Now, I'm very disappointed that I can't be with you this afternoon to be a part of this discussion, but I hope that these initial comments will have been some value in starting the session. So enjoy.